Welcome back. African Union member states have been urged to stem the problem of youth migration. Hundreds of young African migrants have died in seas on their quest for better lives elsewhere. Chairperson of the AU and Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe says the migration of young people has slowed Africa's growth and dented its image. He was speaking at the opening of the NEPAD Heads of State and Government meeting in Addis Ababa. For more from the AU summit, we cross now to our contributing editor, Vuyo Movoko. Vuyo, good afternoon to you. So there's been lots on the agenda ahead of the official beginning of processions tomorrow, that opening of the 34th NEPAD Heads of State and Government. Let's touch briefly on that. President Mugabe is saying Africa has to protect its young people.
Good afternoon, Natasha. Well, yes, indeed, there are meetings back to back, including the meeting you were talking about that was addressed by the President of the AU, President Robert Mugabe, as well by the Chairperson of the AU, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. Now, someone who was in that meeting and was going to give us a sense of what went on in there is, of course, our own Minister in the Presidency, Minister Jeff Radebe. Minister, welcome and thanks very much for joining us.
Good afternoon to you, Vuyo, and all your viewers of SABC TV.
Well, the President, President Jacob Zuma, was expected to give a couple of reports to the summit.
Well, thanks for inviting us to this interview. This morning, the President started at the breakfast meeting where he was briefing his counterpart about the progress we are making, himself as the champion of this presidential infrastructure championing initiative, and then now formally at the NEPAD meeting, which is chaired by the President of Senegal, His Excellency President Sall. So the President indicated very good progress that is being made in all the infrastructure projects in Africa. As you know, the main goal is to ensure that we integrate this continent and build infrastructure to fire the economy through energy, to interconnect Africa through rail and road and aviation. So it was very clear from the report and the responses from his counterparts here at the NEPAD meeting that they recognize the good progress that has been made. But of course, there are also projects that face various kinds of challenges. That is why it's important for this report to be made.
Well, let's talk about those challenges and how they were dealt with in that meeting, because I mean, most people, well, almost everyone is not in a particularly good space now. The economic conditions across the world not really conducive. We're talking a day ago to the Chairperson of the AU Commission, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, who was saying they've had to revise the budget. So all the noble projects need money, but unfortunately money is not there.
Yes, indeed. We're living in a very gloomy world at the moment, economically speaking. But you'll recall, Vuyo, that some of these projects have been planned for quite a number of years, and it is very pleasing to note that some of these projects are in fact being implemented as we speak. But hopefully with the planned International Investment Financing Conference that the President is going to be convening during the course of this year, we may be able to attract investment from around the world. You will recall that in spite of the negative economic growth around the globe, but Africa is one of those few regions in the world where in many countries they are registering very positive growth in our country. So there is a potential in this economic crisis in the world. As they say, don't waste a crisis. So the opportunity is here in Africa for investment, particularly in infrastructure. One of the interesting reports from the President of the African Development Bank was giving us some statistics that by year 2050, there'll be about 2 billion Africans in this continent. So that means we need to take advantage of this demographic dividend by plowing in our resources now so that we can reap them in the future.
But if Davos is anything to go by, that's not something to take for granted.
Yes, indeed. You'll know that the President also highlighted that as we speak, there's about 365 billion rand worth of investment in the infrastructure here in Africa. And of course, another report that he gave is about this China-Africa a meeting, FOCAC, that was held
Johannesburg.
in Johannesburg late last year. Also, though, there's a possibility of increasing the investment into infrastructure. President Xi Jinping committed about $60 billion US, in particular on infrastructure in Africa. So in combination, all these things indicate that Africa is on a rise.
We have run out of time, but one big problem remains, and that is there's a lot of areas that are still embroiled in conflict and civil wars. There's your Boko Harams and your Al-Shabaabs in Nigeria and Somalia. How do we deal with those problems? Because they will also be another stumbling block over and above the lack of money.
Yes, indeed. There is a meeting of the Peace and Security Council that is going to be convened later this afternoon. But the good news is that South Africa has been re-elected into the Peace and Security Council of Africa, and we're going to be making our contribution because we've always been at the forefront of making sure that there's peace and stability in Africa, because without that peace and stability, it will not be possible for young people to reap the benefits of this democracy that is now mushrooming in many parts of the world. So all those issues will be dealt with comprehensively, the issues around Boko Haram, the issues around migration and so on, the other conflict areas in Burundi, Somalia and so on. So those will be dealt with at this PSC this afternoon.
Minister, thank you very much. Minister in the presidency, Jeff Radebe, giving us an update on the meetings that are still going on here at the African Union Summit here in Addis Ababa. And with that, it's back to you in the studio in Johannesburg, Natasha.
Vuyo, thank you very much.